The fluorescent lights of the corner store cast their usual pale glow across the empty aisles. Outside, the highway stretched into darkness, and the small town had already settled into its nightly silence. Most people were home by now, doors locked, lights dimmed. The store should have been empty too, closed for the night, but Emily was still there, finishing up the final tasks of her shift. She had worked at this convenience store for nearly 2 years now. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. She knew every inch of the place, which tiles were cracked, which freezer door stuck, where the security camera had a blind spot. Tonight felt like any other night. She had already counted the register, mopped the floors, and locked the front doors at exactly 11 p.m., just like she was supposed to. That's when she heard it. The sharp rap of knuckles against glass. Emily looked up from behind the counter where she was organizing receipts. 3 figures stood outside the locked doors. Young men, probably in their early 20s. One of them was tall with wavy brown hair that fell carelessly across his forehead. He wore a maroon Letterman jacket with white leather sleeves, expensive looking, the kind that screamed privilege. His posture was relaxed, almost arrogant, like someone who had never been told no in his life. He smiled when he saw her looking. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Hey," he called through the glass, his voice muffled but audible. "You going to let us in or what?" Emily walked toward the doors, her heart already beginning to beat a little faster. She didn't like the way they were looking at her. "We're closed," she called back. "I already locked up. You'll have to come back tomorrow." The young man in the Letterman jacket, clearly the leader of the group, laughed and exchanged glances with his friends. "Come on, don't be like that. We just need a few things. It'll take 2 minutes." "I'm sorry," Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Store policy. We're closed." His smile faded, replaced by something harder. "You hear that, guys? Store policy." His friend snickered. "Look, sweetheart, I don't think you understand. We're not asking." Emily felt her stomach drop. Something was wrong here. She could feel it in the way he leaned against the glass, in the casual cruelty of his tone. "I can't open the doors," she said. "I've already closed the register." "Then open it again," he said, his voice sharpening. "Or are you just going to stand there and be difficult?" She took a step back. "Please, just leave. I don't want any trouble." The young man's eyes narrowed. "You're the one making trouble, not us. We're customers. You're supposed to serve us." One of his friends, a shorter guy with a buzz cut, pressed his face closer to the glass. "Come on, just let us in. What's the big deal?" Emily's mind raced. She could call the police, but her phone was in the back room. The panic button under the counter was old and unreliable. And these 3 men were right outside, watching her every move. "I'm not allowed to reopen once I've closed," she said, her voice quieter now. "Please understand." The leader's jaw tightened. For a moment, he just stared at her, and Emily saw something dangerous flicker in his expression. Then, to her horror, he reached for the door handle and pulled. It didn't budge, she had locked it, but the fact that he tried sent a spike of fear through her chest. "Open this door," he said, his voice low and threatening now. "No," Emily whispered. "What did you say?" "I said no." Her voice was shaking, but she forced herself to meet his eyes through the glass. The young man's face darkened. He slammed his hand against the door, and the sound echoed through the empty store like a gunshot. Emily flinched. "You don't know who you're messing with," he said. "Do you have any idea who my father is?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat felt too tight. That's when she heard it, a low cough from the back of the store. It came from the direction of the closed diner section, through the darkened hallway that led to the back room. Emily's eyes flickered toward the sound. She had forgotten. Earlier that evening, a group of bikers had come in, rough-looking men in leather vests, and asked if they could wait in the diner area until their ride showed up. Management had said yes. They had been quiet, polite even. And Emily had almost forgotten they were there. Almost. The three men outside hadn't heard the cough. They were too focused on her, too convinced that they were in control. "Last chance," the leader said, his voice dripping with entitlement. "Open the door, or I'm calling my father. You'll lose your job. Maybe worse." Emily's hands trembled. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But there was nowhere to go. She was trapped between the counter and three men who clearly didn't care about her fear. "I told you," she said, barely above a whisper. "We're closed." The young man laughed, but it was a cold, humorless sound. "You're going to regret this." From the back hallway, another sound. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, not rushed. Emily's heart lifted just a fraction. She wasn't alone. If you want to see how this story unfolds, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to be heard, and your support helps us bring more of them to you. Now, let's continue. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. The three men outside were too busy posturing to notice at first, but Emily saw the shadow before they did. A large figure emerged from the darkened hallway, a man with a gray beard, broad shoulders, and a worn leather vest. His eyes swept over the scene, taking in everything in an instant. Emily standing behind the counter, pale and shaking, the three men outside, hands pressed against the glass, faces twisted with arrogance and frustration. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, arms crossed, watching. One by one, more figures appeared behind him. Men of various ages, all wearing similar vests, all with the same calm, unreadable expressions. They filled the space behind the counter, a silent wall of presence. The leader outside finally noticed them. His confident smirk faltered. "Who the hell are you?" The bearded man took a slow step forward. "Store's closed," he said simply. His voice was deep, gravelly, and utterly calm. "And what, you're the manager?" the young man shot back, trying to regain his composure. "Nope," the biker replied. "Just someone who doesn't like seeing people get pushed around." The leader scoffed. "This is between us and her. Stay out of it." The bearded man tilted his head slightly. "Can't do that." "Why not?" "Because she asked you to leave and you didn't." The young man's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. We're customers." "She's being rude." "She's doing her job," the biker said. "And you're making her uncomfortable." "That's not being a customer. That's being a problem." One of the other men outside, the one with the buzz cut, shifted nervously. "Dude, maybe we should just go." "Shut up," the leader snapped. He turned back to the bikers. "You think you can intimidate me? Do you have any idea who I am?" The bearded man shrugged. "Don't care." That simple statement seemed to hit harder than any threat could have. The young man's jaw clenched. "My father is." "Still don't care," the biker interrupted. Emily watched, her heart pounding. She had never seen anyone stand up to someone like this, someone who was so used to getting their way that they couldn't even comprehend being told no. The leader took a step back, glancing at his friends. His confidence was cracking, and he knew it. "Fine," he said. "We'll leave. But this isn't over." "Yeah, it is," the bearded man said. "Walk away." For a moment, the young man looked like he might argue, might try to salvage his pride. But then he saw the number of bikers inside, saw the way they stood, calm, unafraid, unbothered by his status or his threats, and something in him broke. "Whatever," he muttered. He turned and walked toward the parking lot, his friends trailing behind him. Emily let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her legs felt weak, and she had to grip the counter to stay upright. The bearded man turned to her. "You okay, miss?" She nodded, though tears were already gathering in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't know what to do." "You did fine," he said. "You stood your ground. That's more than most people would do." Outside, the three men were getting into a sleek black car. Emily could see them through the window, arguing with each other. The leader was on his phone now, pacing, his anger still visible even from a distance. "They're not leaving," Emily said quietly. The bearded man glanced outside. "They will. People like that always do. They just need time to realize they're not in control anymore." Emily wiped at her eyes. "I don't understand. Why did you help me? You don't even know me." The biker looked at her for a long moment. "Don't need to know you to see when something's wrong. That's reason enough." The three men didn't leave the parking lot. Instead, they stood by their car, voices raised, gesturing angrily toward the store. Emily could see the leader on his phone again, talking rapidly, his free hand cutting through the air. Whatever he was saying, it wasn't good. "What's he doing?" she asked. "Calling for backup," one of the younger bikers said. He had a scar near his temple and tired eyes. "Guys like that always do when they don't get their way." Emily's stomach twisted. "What if he calls the police?" The bearded man shook his head. "Let him. We didn't do anything wrong." "You didn't do anything wrong." "But he'll lie," Emily said. "He'll say I was rude, that I refused to serve them for no reason." "Then we'll tell them the truth," the biker replied. "And there's a lot more of us than there are of them." Emily wanted to believe him, but fear still gnawed at her. Men like the one outside didn't lose. They had money, connections, lawyers. What did she have? A minimum wage job and a group of strangers who might disappear the moment things got complicated. As if reading her thoughts, the bearded man spoke again. "We're not going anywhere until you're safe. That's a promise." Emily looked at him, at the steady certainty in his eyes, and felt something shift inside her. These men had no reason to stay, no obligation to protect her. But they were doing it anyway. Outside, more headlights appeared. 2 more cars pulled into the parking lot, then a third. Young men poured out, friends of the leader, Emily assumed. They gathered around him, listening as he pointed at the store, at the bikers inside, working himself into a righteous fury. "There's more of them now," Emily whispered. The bikers didn't seem concerned. A few of them moved closer to the doors, positioning themselves where they could be seen. It wasn't aggressive. It was a statement: "We're here. We're not leaving." The leader finished his phone call and turned to address his growing crowd. Emily couldn't hear what he was saying, but she could see the effect it had. The group was getting louder, more animated. A few of them were laughing, as if this were all some kind of game. "They think this is funny," Emily said bitterly. "That's because they've never had to face real consequences," the bearded man replied. "Tonight might be the first time." One of the men from the crowd approached the doors. He was bigger than the leader, with the build of someone who spent a lot of time in the gym. He tried the handle, found it locked, then pounded on the glass with his fist. "Open up," he shouted. "We're not going anywhere." The bearded biker stepped forward until he was standing directly in front of the door. He didn't pound back. He didn't shout. He just stood there, looking the man in the eye through the glass. The effect was immediate. The man outside faltered, his bravado slipping. He glanced back at the leader, as if looking for permission to escalate. But the leader just waved him off, frustration clear on his face. Emily realized something in that moment. These men were used to winning because people let them win. They were used to intimidation working because no one ever stood their ground. But tonight, they had run into people who weren't afraid. And they didn't know what to do about it. The standoff continued for what felt like an eternity. Emily stood behind the counter, watching the scene unfold like something out of a movie. The parking lot was full now, at least a dozen young men, all of them dressed in expensive clothes, all of them radiating the same entitled confidence. They stood in clusters, talking amongst themselves, occasionally glancing at the store. But they didn't try the doors again. The bikers remained inside, calm and watchful. They didn't talk much, didn't pace or show any signs of nervousness. They just waited, their presence a quiet but unmistakable deterrent. Emily's phone buzzed in the back room. She wanted to check it, to call someone, but she didn't dare leave the counter. What if something happened while she was gone? What if the men outside decided to break the glass? "You should sit down," the bearded man said, noticing her trembling legs. "You've been standing for a while." Emily shook her head. "I'm okay." "No, you're not," he said gently. "And that's okay too. This is a lot to handle." She finally allowed herself to sink onto the small stool behind the counter. Her whole body ached with tension. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't been here." "Don't," he said. "You'll drive yourself crazy with what-ifs." "But you did everything right," he interrupted. "You said no. You stood your ground. That takes guts." Emily looked down at her hands. They were still shaking. "I don't feel gutsy. I feel scared." "Scared and gutsy aren't opposites," he replied. "Sometimes they come together." Outside, the crowd was starting to thin. A few of the men were getting back into their cars, clearly bored or uncomfortable with how long this was taking. The leader tried to stop them, but they brushed him off. One by one, headlights flared to life and vehicles began pulling out of the parking lot. "They're leaving," Emily said, hardly daring to believe it. "Some of them," the biker said. "But not all." He was right. The leader and a core group of about 5 men remained. They stood in a tight circle, talking in low voices. Every so often, the leader would glance at the store, his expression dark. "What do you think they're planning?" Emily asked. "Nothing good," the biker replied. "But whatever it is, we'll handle it." Emily wanted to ask how he could be so sure, how he could be so calm in the face of something that felt so dangerous. But before she could speak, the leader broke away from his group and walked back to the doors. This time, he didn't pound on the glass. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at Emily through the window. His expression was different now, not angry, but cold. Calculating. "I know who you are," he said loud enough for her to hear. "I know where you work. You think this is over, but it's not." Emily's blood ran cold. The bearded man stepped forward. "You threatening her?" The leader smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just stating facts." "Then here's a fact for you," the biker said. "You try anything, and you'll answer to more than just us. This whole thing is on camera." He pointed to the security camera mounted above the door. "And I've got friends who know people. You want to play games? We'll play. But you won't win." The smile slipped from the leader's face. He hadn't thought about cameras. Hadn't considered that there might be evidence. "This is harassment," he said, but his voice lacked conviction now. "No," the biker replied. "This is protection. There's a difference." The leader stood there for another moment, jaw working as if he wanted to say something more. But he didn't. Instead, he turned and walked back to his friends. Emily watched as they climbed into their cars. This time, they didn't linger. Within minutes, the parking lot was empty again, the roar of engines fading into the night. She let out a shaky breath. Is it really over? The bearded man nodded. For tonight, yeah. I think it is. The store felt impossibly quiet after the men left. Emily sat on her stool, staring at the empty parking lot, hardly able to process what had just happened. The bikers had relaxed their stances, but they hadn't left yet. They seemed to sense that she needed a few more minutes before she'd be okay to leave alone. Thank you, she said again, her voice hoarse. I don't know how to thank you enough. The bearded man waved a hand dismissively. You don't need to. Just doing what anyone should do. But not everyone would. Emily said. Most people would have stayed in the back and pretended they didn't see anything. He shrugged. Maybe. But that's not who we are. One of the younger bikers, the one with the scar, pulled up a chair and sat down across from her. You did good tonight, he said. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did. Emily shook her head. I just stood there. I didn't do anything. You said no, he replied. That's something. That's everything, actually. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes, a kind of understanding that came from experience. Has something like this happened to you? She asked. He nodded slowly. Different circumstances, but yeah. I know what it's like to feel cornered. How did you get through it? 1 minute at a time, he said. And by remembering that just because someone acts like they're in charge doesn't mean they are. Emily thought about the leader, about his expensive jacket and his entitled smirk. About the way he had demanded she open the door, as if her job, her safety, her boundaries didn't matter. He really thought he could just do whatever he wanted. People like that always do, the biker said. Until someone shows them otherwise. The bearded man checked his phone. We should probably get going. But are you okay to close up here? Or do you want one of us to stay until you're in your car? Emily considered. The rational part of her knew the men were gone, that the danger had passed. But the frightened part of her, the part that was still shaking, wanted someone to stay. Could you? She asked quietly. Just until I'm in my car? Of course, he said. Emily finished the last of her closing tasks, turning off lights, checking the back door, grabbing her keys and phone. The bikers waited patiently, not rushing her, just providing a quiet, steady presence. When she finally stepped outside, the night air hit her like a wave. It was cool and clean, and she realized she had been holding her breath for the past hour without even knowing it. Her car was parked at the far end of the lot. The bearded man walked with her, his boots crunching on the gravel. He didn't say anything, didn't try to fill the silence. He just walked beside her, making sure she got there safely. When they reached her car, Emily turned to him. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you do this? I mean, you don't know me. You were just waiting in the back. You could have ignored the whole thing. He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the dark highway. A long time ago, he finally said, I was in a situation where I needed help. And one stepped up. Changed everything for me. I figured the least I could do was pass that on. Emily felt tears prick her eyes again. Well, thank you. For passing it on to me. He nodded. Drive safe. She got into her car, locked the doors, and started the engine. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she could see him in her rearview mirror, standing there until she was out of sight. The next morning, Emily woke up exhausted. She had barely slept, her mind replaying the events of the previous night on an endless loop. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the leader's face pressed against the glass, heard his voice demanding she let him in. Her roommate, Sarah, knocked on her door around noon. Hey, you okay? You've been in there all morning. Emily opened the door. She must have looked as bad as she felt because Sarah's eyes widened immediately. Oh my God, what happened? Emily told her everything. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to anger to worry. "You need to report this," Sarah said when she finished. "To the police, to your manager, to someone." "And say what?" Emily asked. "Some guys wanted to come into the store after hours. They didn't actually do anything illegal. They threatened you." "They implied things," Emily corrected. "There's a difference, apparently." Sarah shook her head. "This is insane. You shouldn't have to deal with this." "I know," Emily said quietly. "But I did. And I survived it. Because those bikers were there. What if they hadn't been?" It was the question Emily had been trying not to think about. "I don't know." That afternoon, Emily called her manager and explained what had happened. He listened, made sympathetic noises, and then said, "Well, as long as you're okay and nothing was damaged, I think we can just move forward." "Move forward?" Emily repeated. "3 men harassed me, and you want to just move forward?" "I'm not sure what else you want me to do," he said. "They left, didn't they? And you said some other customers helped you out." Emily felt anger rise in her chest. "They weren't customers. They were people who saw something wrong and decided to help. And now I'm sitting here wondering if those guys are going to come back." There was a pause. "Do you think they will?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "But I'm scared they might." Her manager sighed. "Look, I'll make a note of it in the incident report. And if they do come back, call the police immediately. But beyond that, there's not much I can do." Emily hung up feeling more alone than before. The system wasn't designed to protect people like her. It was designed to avoid lawsuits and bad publicity. Her fear didn't factor into it. Over the next few days, Emily found herself constantly looking over her shoulder. Every time the store doors opened, her heart would jump. Every time she saw a car that looked like the one from that night, her hands would start to shake. But the men didn't come back. Slowly, cautiously, Emily began to relax. She started sleeping better. She stopped jumping at every sound. The memory of that night faded from something sharp and immediate to something more distant, like a bad dream. But it had changed her. She noticed things now that she hadn't before. The way some customers spoke to her as if she weren't really there. The way others made comments that crossed the line from friendly to inappropriate. She found herself less willing to tolerate it, more willing to speak up. One evening, a middle-aged man came in and started making jokes about her appearance. Before, Emily might have smiled uncomfortably and tried to ignore it. But tonight, she looked him directly in the eye and said, "Please don't talk to me like that." He seemed startled. "I was just being friendly." "That's not friendly," she said. "That's inappropriate." He left without buying anything, muttering under his breath. But Emily didn't care. She had drawn a line, and it had held. A few weeks later, she was working a closing shift when a group of bikers pulled into the parking lot. Emily's heart jumped, but then she recognized one of them. The young guy with the scar. He came inside and smiled when he saw her. "Hey. Remembered you worked here. Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing." "I'm okay," Emily said, and she realized she meant it. "Better than I was." "Good," he said. "That's real good." They talked for a few minutes, nothing deep, just small talk about the weather and the road. But when he left, Emily felt lighter. It was a reminder that not everyone was a threat. That there were still people in the world who cared about strangers. Months later, Emily was training a new employee, a young woman named Jasmine who reminded her a little of herself. She showed her how to work the register, how to stock shelves, how to handle difficult customers. "What do I do if someone won't leave?" Jasmine asked. Emily paused. "You tell them firmly but politely that the store is closed. You don't unlock the doors for anyone after hours. And if they keep pushing, you trust your instincts. What if I'm scared? Then you're scared, Emily said. But scared doesn't mean you can't act. It just means you have to be brave while you're doing it. Jasmine nodded slowly. Has that ever happened to you? Emily smiled. Yeah. It has. She didn't tell her the whole story. Not yet. Maybe someday she would. But for now, it was enough to know that she had survived it, that she had learned from it, that she had become someone who didn't shrink away from conflict anymore. That night, as Emily locked up the store, she thought about the leader with his expensive jacket and his arrogant smile. She wondered if he ever thought about that night, if he ever realized how close he had come to crossing a line he couldn't uncross. She hoped he did. She hoped it kept him up at night the way it had kept her up. Not out of revenge, but because maybe, just maybe, it would make him think twice before treating someone else the way he had treated her. The parking lot was quiet. The highway stretched out into darkness. But Emily wasn't afraid anymore. She had learned something important that night, that strength doesn't always look the way you expect it to. Sometimes it's a group of bikers stepping out of the shadows. Sometimes it's a scared cashier saying no. And sometimes, it's both. As she drove home, Emily thought about all the people in the world who had been in situations like hers. Who had felt small and powerless and alone. She thought about how many of them never got the help they needed, never had someone step in at the right moment. And she made a promise to herself, if she ever saw someone in trouble, if she ever witnessed someone being mistreated or threatened or scared, she wouldn't look away. She would step up. She would be the person for someone else that those bikers had been for her. Because that's how the world changes. Not through grand gestures or sweeping reforms, but through small acts of courage. Through one person deciding that another person's dignity matters. Through someone saying, I see you, I believe you, and I'm not going to let this happen. Emily didn't know if she'd ever see those bikers again. She didn't even know most of their names. But she carried their lesson with her every day, that being strong doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you act anyway. And that's enough. That's more than enough. It's everything. Asterisk. Thank you for reading. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own moments of fear or courage, please share it. Stories like this remind us that we're not as alone as we sometimes feel, and that there are still people in the world willing to stand up for what's right. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And remember, you're stronger than you think.